The rest of the chapters I had you read for Accelerate. This is a useful book in getting ideas when you're out interviewing, things to look for. I had a conversation with one of you before class started who talked about an interview he had, and he asked some very good questions of the firm he was interviewing with, and their answers were not quite so good. It was like, do I accept the job anyway? Recognize that when you're going for a job interview, you are every bit as much allowed to ask questions and to screen them. The advantage you have, I mean, job hunting is always tricky regardless. And it can be frustrating and be a little scary. That said, this is very much a hot tech market. I don't know how many you saw. I think it was I don't know if it's Desert News or Salt Lake Tribune, one or the other, talked about the tech market here. Point out the fact that the single biggest hire of tech people right now is the church. Church is very aggressive. It's always been very aggressive in its use of technology. My first job as an undergrad here was with a computer-assisted translation program that was being funded by private donations, but specifically was being designed for computer-assisted translation of church materials. That was 1974, so church has always been very, very aggressive in its use of technology. Yes?
The most hires here in Utah or in the nation?
The Salt Lake area, yeah.
Okay.
Here, yeah. No, not the nation. That was just the Salt Lake area. But the other interesting thing was the same article had a table of salaries for various tech jobs, and all of them were showing salary ranges above 100K. Now they were just like senior web developer, senior this and so on. This is a hot market, so if you're not getting the bites you want, just keep your resume out there, be aggressive. I have faith in all of you. Okay, management practices for software. And once again, I'm not trying to substitute you for actually reading the text. I assume you've done that. Some of the biggest takeaways here is that limiting work in progress and visual management together are important. That was the interesting thing we found. Limiting work in project means taking small bites. Don't try a big bang. Don't try, here's the 300 features we want to implement. Here's the one feature we want to implement next. But they found that, for example, visual management doesn't really help unless you're also limiting work in progress. If you're trying to do a lot of features, visual management doesn't really help you. You're still overwhelmed. This next finding was one of the ones that most interested me because I've long been a proponent of change management systems. A lot of failed projects that I have. Part of the problem is failure to manage the requirements. And their finding is that the highest delivery performance is lightweight change management. Either a peer review, asking one of your fellow programmers, do you think I should do this? Or this is what I'm going to do, do you see any problems with it? Or none at all. That to me remains counterintuitive, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. My point here is that it's unclear how well doing peer review change management works in a 2 or 3 party situation, which is what I tend to look at as an expert witness. You have a corporate client, you have an outside development firm or vendor or whatever, and there I think you need more formal change management because the client will keep changing the features and the vendor will say, wait, you can't do that. Questions or comments on any of this? Experiences, horror stories, anything? The closer we get to the end of the semester, the fewer questions I see I get. I like to think it's because you understand this stuff, but mostly I think you just want to get out of class. Work in small batches. Time of less than a week. Allow for experimentation, A/B testing. We're going to try this and we're going to try this. We're going to see which one works better. Yes?
Does that mean if it's something that's going to take more than a week, you haven't broke it down enough or something?
It could mean that. It depends on the system. A lot of this is going to depend on the system you're working on and so on. But yes, ideally you want to try and break it down into a week so that your time lost, if it turns out not to work, is at most a week. As I think I mentioned in developing Sundog, I spent several weeks on this one aspect of the game that I thought was going to be really good. And I finally got it up and working, and I looked at it and I said, nope, it doesn't work, and threw it away. And since I was pretty much the sole programmer, that was like 3 weeks lost on a whole game schedule. Make the flow of work visible so you can track the status of products and features. One of the things I noticed at the Silicon Slopes Tech Summit is that there are more and more software products designed exactly to do this, to make the flow of work visible, to let you see what's happening and where it's happening. Gather and implement customer feedback. This was one of the driving forces behind the Agile Manifesto, and it was an important one because I have seen situations where, say in corporate development, management comes down and say, we want you to write, a new system that's going to do this. And they don't let you go and talk to the actual end users of the corporation. And then the end users go ahead and say, this is what we wanted. Team experimentation. Allow teams to find new stuff for you. Let's go back to Armor, classic diagram. We tend to focus a lot on the dead ends, the experimentation that leads to something that doesn't work. That's still information, and sometimes if your team's experimenting, they discover something new that does work. The issue here, there are two issues. One is often you have experimentation that's being done on a critical path. You don't want that. Unless you're truly blocked. The other is that you have experimentation that goes on for weeks or months. So if you're going to have experimentation, it has to be off the critical path, off of what you're trying to deliver or keep up to date. I didn't change my letters there. Anyway. And you want short-term experimentation to see whether or not you should continue to pursue it. Thoughts, questions, ideas? Making work sustainable. One of the biggest issues I've seen in half a century is software engineering, well, 45 years for me, but almost half a century, I'm old, is how much organizations rely on heroic development. It's like, yeah, we're going to have everyone work 60 hours a week. We'll have them come in weekends, we'll put in extra work. By the way, you're salaried, you're not hourly. And you run into a number of problems. DeMarco and Lister point out it's hard to get more than 40 productive hours of programming out of software engineers a week on a sustained basis. Do it for short periods of time, but it's hard to do it on a sustained basis. When you have your programmers working 60 hours a week, often what they do is they're spending 30 hours a week with email and meetings and phone calls and interruptions and everything else, and only spending about 30 hours a week actually doing programming. Are deployments feared and are they disruptive to work? Those are key issues they found in situations where your deployment strategy is one of continuous improvement. Can you deploy a new version of the system without pain? Or does everyone sort of brace themselves and figure they're going to spend the weekend trying to fix all the bugs that come up as you deploy the system on Friday? Particularly on Friday of a 3-day weekend. The organizations that do that. So you want systems that are designed to be deployed easily into multiple environments. Systems that can detect and tolerate failures in their environment. That means I depend on version 5.1 of a particular API, but if 5.0 is what's installed, my software will cope with that for a while. Can have various components of the systems updated independently, loose coupling. Can ensure stated production systems can be reproduced introduced automatically from version control. This is an idea that's been around for decades, and it's interesting how many places it's still not practiced. Your version control system, you should be able to say, I want version 5.1.3 of this app. And you punch a button, and it builds it. Links in all the necessary resources, the right versions, and deploys it. And build intelligence into the app and platform so that deployment is as simple as possible. In other words, if I'm pushing out a new, all of you get updates for your apps on your smartphone. And generally speaking, it works well. It takes a little while. You get the little, whatever the progress meter is for your particular environment. But it just happens. That is often not the case for other types of software systems. Deployment can end up being very painful. Questions or comments? Burnout. As I already explained to you, I burned out. I didn't program for 4 years. I burned out on a startup. I burned out because there were things I thought were going to happen that I was going to be able to do, certain rewards I thought I was going to have, and it didn't happen. And I pushed myself over the finish line, got the next version of Sundog finished, quit a week later, didn't program for 4 years. You don't want your programmers burning out. Now, nowadays, particularly in a hot job market, they won't burn out, they'll just leave. And you'll get the Dead Sea effect. I assume you all read the Dead Sea effect. All your good people will leave. They'll say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I can find other jobs. I'll go be a consultant. What leads to burnout? Work overload, lack of control, inability to influence decisions that affect your job. You see the right way to do things and you're forbidden from doing it. And you suffer the consequences. How many of you have had that experience where you're at wherever you've worked or been an intern, it's been obvious to you that we should be doing X and instead it's mandated that we do Y and it ends up horrible. Have any of you had that experience? Anyone want to share experiences? Anyone? Yeah.
Oh, we had a situation in which we had two almost identical subsystems with some theoretical conceptual differences, but not actually in how they were implemented. And we were developing them side by side, and we eventually convinced our supervisor to merge them into one.
Oh,
That was a good
outcome. Yes.
I was programming a microcontroller for this building for these HVAC guys. And so I had a person that I was talking to that was on the sales team who was talking to them. And the way that they were asking me to program it was that it was supposed to connect to the Wi-Fi. And they made it so basically if they changed the Wi-Fi, it would float off into oblivion. And the only way to get the microcontroller back would literally be to go into the group and reset the thing at a binary level. So I'm like, look, this is a fundamental flaw. If you program it this way, and the Wi-Fi network goes down, they're all dead forever. And they're like, no, that's how they say they want it. That's how they want it programmed. So we'll just charge them when it happens.
Oh, yeah. Any other horror stories anyone wants to share?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You will use PHP 5 something, or 7 at least, or something.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, that happens. Insufficient rewards. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's benefits. Sometimes it's just the team you get to work on. Sometimes it's education. Again, this is a pet peeve of mine. A lot of firms won't pay for continuing education because they'll just learn and become better at this stuff and they'll go find another job. And it's just the opposite. People will quit so they can go learn the stuff that you're not letting them learn how to do. Education, spending on education almost always benefits your organization. Because the last thing as engineers you want to do is don't want to feel out of date. And they might actually pick up some new concepts, some new tools, some new ideas. Absence of fairness in decision-making process, and we break down the community and supportive work environment. This sort of goes back to my late sister's famous comment, don't they know they're dealing with grown-ups? There was just this interesting great big gulf between management and engineering a lot of the time. Values conflict between the organization and individual. If you don't like what the organization is doing, how long can you stay there and keep working? If you have disagreements with the type of work they're doing, with their customers, how do you deal with that? How to fight burnout. You want a generative organization. You want to reduce or eliminate deployment pain, hire and empower effective leaders, as we've already talked about and has been written about multiple times. Number one reason for people leaving a job is their immediate supervisor. A bad supervisor can drive the best people away. Invest in best practices wisely with training and pilot projects, and adapt to changes. So, if you have continuous delivery and lean practices, you end up with less deployment pain, and, coincidentally, less burnout. Okay, more employee satisfaction. There are questions that they used to measure this were, would you recommend your organization as a place to work? Would you recommend your team as a place to work? Those are two very important things. It's like, would I recommend to my friend, yeah, come work here, this is a great place? Or would I say, no, I really don't want to come here? And ditto on a team level. You know, yes, I really want this person who I like and whose opinion I value to come work on my team, or no, stay away. This satisfaction, this Net Promoter Score, correlates to a number of important things. But the bottom line is loyalty is a two-way street. You'll often have organizations say, you know, our employees should be loyal to us. Why are you leaving us? We hired you. We did this. Of course, we can fire you without any prior notice. A lot of organizations fail to realize that loyalty is a two-way street. They need to earn your loyalty. If they want you to show loyalty to them, if they want you to stick with them through whatever tough times there are, they need to give you a reason to do so. Now, in economic downturns, sometimes the reason is because I have to pay my bills. There's nothing wrong with sticking with a job you don't like simply because you need the money and you don't have any other prospects. That's life. But as an organization, you want your employees to be happy because they are more productive and they will stick around. Changing culture, organizational culture and identity. The quote there, people are the greatest asset, yet they're treated like expendable, and I'll add interchangeable resources. This gets back to the concept we talked about earlier in the semester. There's an industrial mindset in a lot of organizations dealing with IT when it is really far more like a sports team, where you need to pick people for their talents and skills and their ability to work with the rest of the team. Diversity in tech. They talked, during more, they didn't have much research here, but this was interesting that women are leaving tech at a 45% higher rate than men. They didn't cite reasons why that is. I'm not surprised. I think I've already said in the class here that given two people with equal backgrounds, my bias is I will hire a female. My professional experience, I've built engineering teams, I hired men and women. I have a better track record with the women I hired. The men tend to be more volatile, quite frankly. More cowboyish, if you will. Leaders and managers. Okay, this is a whole book, a chapter on leadership. A great leader cannot guarantee success, but a bad one can also certainly guarantee failure. That's actually straight out of Sun Tzu, Art of War. So, the issue is leadership matters in IT. Someone who is an effective leader will inspire loyalty, will inspire a better performance, and will make you feel more accountable for the work you do. I think I've mentioned Carol Teasley here before. She was vice president of Fannie Mae back when I came out to supervise 20, 25 consultants that we had at OSG at Fannie Mae, and she was over all that. So I was sort of she was my parallel report. Carol remains a good friend 20 years later. If Carol called me up, and I think I've said this, Carol called me up and said, "Hey Bruce, I've got this thing I'm putting together. Would you like to come work for me?" I'd probably say, "Yeah." What is it? She was one of the best leaders I ever worked for. She was more than a manager. She was really a leader. But as they say, leaders cannot achieve goals on their own. They need their teams. They need a suitable architecture. And they need the other factors. What should managers do? Ensure existing resources are made available, create space and opportunities for learning and improving. Establish a dedicated training budget. There, right again, I've been saying this for years. They find the same thing. Encourage staff to attend tech conferences. Ditto. Set up internal hack days, allowing cross-functional teams to work on a project. Encourage teams to organize internal yak days to work on technical debt. Oh man, technical debt. Technical debt is what happens when you have a quick and dirty solution and you just try to get it to work. A lot of you, I'm sure, have right now in all your projects a fair amount of technical debt. We had to do this demo today. We did a lot of quick and dirty stuff to make the demo run. The stuff that you want to go back and clean up and fix is the technical debt. And what you'll find is that you'll often have organizations where you're pushing and pushing for, say, your 1.0 release, and you do your 1.0 release, and it's like, okay, now we can go back and clean up all the ugly stuff we did to make the 1.0 release. I said, no, we want 2.0. You have no time to clean up the technical debt. And that's where you end up with software rot. It just gets worse. Give staff dedicated time. Internal DevOps mini conferences. Give staff internal time to experiment with new tools and technologies. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. Midterm next week. We've got status report this week. Watch one podcast. Midterm will open. And we've got one more lecture, so I'll jump up again. But this is where I have to put the slide. Midterm will open at 5 after midnight, Sunday night, meaning Monday morning. And we'll be open until 11:59 on Monday, but it's 3 hours time, so once you start, you have to finish within 3 hours. The week after the midterm, you get the whole week off. No podcast, no status report. I assume you're doing, I assume some of you will still be doing programming and so on, but it's like, okay, bask in that, and we'll meet again on April 1st. I'll be lecturing on April 1st on legal issues and working in information technology. I may have one other lecture that I throw in there. So there's that. Now let's